Hello boys and girls and families of Riverview. This is Mr. Love on May 19th. I'll be bringing a learning plan to you today by video. I will start out by going and visiting with the baby chicks. Then we'll take a trip over to the school garden to see what's been happening over there. I'll share some ideas for a learning plan for an investigation for this week, as well as a video challenge. Here are the baby chicks after 5 weeks after they hatched from their eggs. And we keep this fence over their cage at night because they are able to fly out and then they go all over the place and make a big mess. So at night we keep them in this bin with this wire over, and they like to perch up on their water container, and here's their food dispenser. But when we take a close look, they're getting more of their adult feathers. They're starting to get little tail feathers. And they've been growing fast. My daughter Kalia has been charting their growth, weighing them and measuring their length once a week. So I'll show you that data that she's been collecting. During the day we take them outside. We have a little outside pen for them. So I'll show you that. And then pretty soon we'll be able to put them in with the bigger chickens in the big pen. I'll share this investigation that my daughter did with the baby chicks. She's observed in past years that the baby chicks grow really fast. She was wondering how fast they grow, and her hypothesis was that the chicks would grow differently every week. So some weeks faster, some weeks slower. She wanted to make a growth chart, measure their height and weight, and also make observations about ways that they were changing. So this chart shows the data she's collected so far, and we can see their weight almost doubled from 48 grams to 94 grams from the second week until the third week. She didn't start this until the chicks were 2 weeks old, and then they continued, and actually their rate of growth has increased over the 6 weeks that she's been measuring. We can also see the height that she measured in centimeters and some observations that she's made each week when she's observed them. Here we are outside of the school garden, and just like so many days when we come down as a class to do gardening, there are a few deer outside behind the wood mulch pile. And in the fall when we saw them, the bucks, the male deer, had really big antlers, and we even got to see them sparring a little bit, fighting with their antlers. They shed their antlers during the winter, and now in the spring we can see new antlers starting to grow. And when they're growing their antlers actually are alive and have blood flowing to them, and they're covered in a fur called velvet. So these antlers will get a lot bigger throughout this spring and summer, and then in the end of the summer the velvet will fall off, and it'll just look like the bone like we're used to seeing. Good morning, this is Mr. Love on May 19th, and today we're going to do some video of our school garden to show you what's happening in the school garden. And I am really missing having all of the students down at the garden and working together and learning together. But today I have a couple of guests. I have Logan, Austin, and Kalia, and they're gonna help me do some work in the garden today, and we'll take you guys along with this video so you can see what's happening and get excited for all the awesome food that's gonna grow this summer. So the first thing I noticed when we came into the garden today was, do you guys want to say hi?
Hi.
Thanks for coming to help today, guys. The first thing I noticed was a sign that says Wednesday PM and Thursday AM. So that's tomorrow night, and then the following morning, frost risk. And that's really important for gardening to know when there's cold weather coming, because if plants are growing and it frosts, it can kill some of the plants. One way to avoid that is with these walls of water. And a lot of you probably remember us filling, a lot of you probably filled walls of water last year. And then if you look inside, this one has a tomato plant growing in it. And the walls of water are these tubes that are full of water, and they actually don't provide water to the plant. And a lot of people think it's for making sure the plants have enough water. But what happens is the water inside of the tubes, right now the sun is shining on them and heating up the water, and water holds heat really well. The air cools off as soon as the sun goes down, but the water inside of the walls of water stays warm actually all night. So even when it gets cold at night, the plants inside will be kept warm by the wall of water surrounding the plant. Here are our school beds, and we've been covering them with plastic and fabric when we're not working because of all of these. These are elm seeds. This is a big pile of elm seeds, and they're coming from these trees surrounding the garden. And it's a really good strategy the elm trees have. Their seeds have they're almost like little wings. And when the wind blows, they can travel pretty far on the wind. Even without much wind, you can kind of see them blowing away. So that helps the elm tree get its seeds to new places. But we don't want elm trees like that growing in our garden. That wouldn't work very well at all. So we have to pick all of these seeds out of the garden, or wait until they germinate and start to grow. Then we can pull out the baby elm trees. But that's a lot of work. So we put the cover over, and then we can just take these covers off to work, and then put the cover back on until all the seeds have fallen out of the elm trees. And right now I can see a lot of yellow seeds up there still. So we probably have another week that we need to keep the beds covered. So we started working in the garden about a week and a half ago by removing some material out of the garden beds. Some of you last year helped build a compost lasagna where to each bed we added layers of cardboard, compost from the food scraps from the cafeteria, and leaves. And also coffee grounds. And some of that material decomposed and became part of the soil over the winter, and some of it didn't decompose. We didn't have a whole lot of moisture from snow this winter, so things didn't break down and decompose as much as I'd hoped. So we took out a lot of partially decomposed cardboard like this. You can see this used to be a cardboard box. Now it's kind of partially decomposed or rotted. Some of the cardboard completely decomposed and became nutrients for the soil. And then there's also a lot of leaves that we had to take out, and we put those over in the compost piles outside of the garden so they can continue to decompose over there. After removing the undecomposed cardboard and leaves, we started pulling out weeds that had started to grow. And we got them all out, but already a week later, there's more weeds starting to come back. So today we're going to focus on re-weeding, getting the weeds out again, getting some of these elm seeds that slipped around the coverings, getting some of those elm seeds out before they germinate, and then also weeding the pathways around the garden beds, because this weed here is called bindweed, and it is a really big challenge for gardening. It will spread underground through its roots. The roots will grow under the garden beds and then pop up inside of our garden. So we're going to try to pull up all the weeds from the pathways as well, lay down some of this fabric because this will block the light from getting to the weeds, and then put wood chips over that. And hopefully by doing all that, we won't have too many weeds to pull this summer. So while weeding, Logan found this potato. This is one we didn't get out of the garden. We pulled most of the potatoes out and took them up to the cafeteria. But here's one that we didn't get, and you can see from this how potatoes grow the next year. So this potato is growing some new roots and a big stem. And eventually, if we let that go, that stem would get really big and divide into other stems and grow leaves. And then the potato will grow a lot more potatoes down in the roots underground for us to dig up this year. So we'll be planting some potatoes just like that, either today or later this week. Once we get all of the weeds out of the garden, we're going to mix in some of these different kinds of compost. Here we have some mushroom compost, garden compost, and composted cow manure. And all of these have nutrients in them that will keep our plants healthy and help them grow. So we're going to mix that in with the soil. And once we have that mixed in, we'll need to set up our watering system. So we have all this irrigation tubing here, and we'll be setting that up so that the garden can get watered on a timer, and we make sure our baby plants get plenty of water. So before we started weeding our garden, it looked a lot like this garden here, which is full of weeds. And the problem with having weeds in your garden is they compete with the plants that you're trying to grow, your corn, carrots, potatoes, watermelons, whatever it is you're trying to grow. So we've talked about the habitat of a plant. They need food, which is nutrients from the soil and energy from the sun, water. They need space to grow, they need sunlight. And so if the weeds are growing, they could shade the plants we're trying to plant. They could also take the water and nutrients out of the soil, and just take up space that the plants that we want to grow need to be able to grow. So besides getting the weeds out to start, we'll have to come and continually weed the garden throughout the summer. In the fall, the first graders did an experiment where we went to the garden and buried some different types of trash in one of the garden beds before we made our compost lasagna. And the plan was to bury that trash, make a prediction as we buried it about which items would decompose or rot in the ground and which ones we'd still be able to find in the spring, and then if some of the items would even be alive or growing. So we had this list of items here that we buried, and last week as we were digging in the ground, we found all of those items, myself and a couple people that were helping, and I will give you the information now so that if you pick up your science portfolio from school next week, you can pull this out and write down what I observed, which was that the glass jar had zero change. It didn't decompose at all, so that would be a 0, no decomposition. The apple core was completely gone. We couldn't find it, so we said 2, completely decomposed. The toilet paper roll, completely decomposed. The plastic bag didn't change at all, so that was 0, no decomposition. The pencil was partly decomposed. The wood had started to rot. The worms we didn't find, but I'm inferring that they were alive and had just moved to a different part of the garden. The aluminum foil had 0 decomposition, so that was a 0. The rock still looked the same. The oak leaf had completely disintegrated or decomposed. It was part of the soil, so that would be a 2. We couldn't find the pumpkin seeds, the raw pumpkin seeds, or the roasted pumpkin seeds. So I think that those all decomposed. I was hoping the raw pumpkin seeds would have been growing into a new pumpkin plant. The sock was partially decomposed, and the paper was totally gone, completely decomposed. So you can record that data on your data table. If you're looking for a science investigation to do this week, you can look at the science investigation menu that I've sent out every week for the last 6 or 7 weeks, as well as the video challenges that I've sent out every week. I also have a new video challenge for you this week, and if you would like to see what some other students are doing or share work that you've been doing, you can do that at the virtual online science fair. So if you have trouble linking to any of those tools or resources, please send me an email and I can help you with that. let's head outside for this week's video challenge. In past weeks, I've provided some video challenges related to plants and animals, including seeds that you can find in your house or flowers growing around your home. I got an idea from a third grader that I thought was really a good idea, and that was to do a plot study where you find one small area and you study that area over time. So I'm setting up a plot study here at my house, and I'm actually going to study an area under our trampoline because you want it to be somewhere where you're not going to mow or weed or be walking a lot, where you can just watch what plants and animals live there and how they change over time. So that might mean checking every day or once a week. And there's a lot of different data you can collect. For sure, you'd want to draw a picture of what you see, but you might also count how many plants there are, count insects or other animals that you find. You might also measure the temperature of the air or the soil. If you have a thermometer, you could also observe how much moisture is in the ground and what the weather's doing. When the weather's warmer or hotter, wetter or drier, if there's rain, how that affects the life inside of your plot. So the first thing is to identify an area that you want to study, and you can mark that area. I've marked mine with a hula hoop. You could also mark it with a rope, some sticks or branches. Here, I'll show you my plot. Okay, like I said, I chose to put mine under the trampoline because I thought it wouldn't get disturbed here. And already I can observe a feather. There are some dandelion seeds with the little, or maybe that's actually, those are cottonwood seeds. There's been a lot of cottonwood seeds floating through the air. There are also a lot of elm seeds inside of the plot. So I don't want to disturb things in here very much, but I will just draw what I see here. I'll count the different plants and make a list of what's in here, and then check on it. I think I'll check on it daily and record changes, and then maybe do a detailed drawing once a week. I'll be watching to see if any of these seeds germinate, and I'm also seeing some small holes in the ground, and I'm wondering if those might be burrows from insects or worms coming up. So I don't see any animals at the moment, but I will be looking for insects, spiders, worms, roly-polies, things like that I've seen around the yard. That's it for today. Have a great week. Keep investigating and be well.